Hello everyone, I am Joseph Rutland and I am here with my wonderful friend, I said that weirdly, my good friend Michael.
Hello.
Do you want to say hi, Michael?
I just did. It's just us today. The
right.
scheduled guest dropped out, so we are winging it. The power of pure charisma.
Power of charisma and also friendship, which really, that's what podcasts are built on. But first of all, Michael, I've got a question for you.
Oh, do go on.
So, let's say that the Earth was being slowly invaded by a fictional life form. No one could prove that it was being invaded by it, but it was. And that people are being slowly picked off by it in the shadows. There are quite a lot of them. What is the most horrific thing that this being could be?
Out of what? All of fiction?
All of fiction, but could be perhaps invading Earth without being noticed. So not something like massive, but could definitely take down a person.
I mean, there's endless possibilities, you know. There's, depending on, scariest just in general would probably be something from Lovecraft, you know, like Nyarlathotep or the like, sort of forces beyond our understanding, slowly driving people insane from the inside out. But I mean, we're talking about a sort of invasion of the body snatchers kind of scenario. I think off my head, sort of fictional species or societies who go a sort of take over from the inside kind of strategy.
Well, it could even be like, if we've seen one example of it in fiction, just a bunch more of it, kind of thing.
What? So like so you could have an entire sort of collective of, say, one individual character. Could be potentially even stranger.
My idea for this was the Thin Man from Pan's Labyrinth, like them slowly invading and picking people off from the shadows.
What, the power of nightmare fuel?
Yeah, exactly. Like, imagine walking down an alleyway in Liverpool and then the Thin Man is like lurking in a bin.
Yeah, that thing is almost sort of scary just for what it represents, if anything. Considering it's supposed to be, I believe, according to Del Toro, he's actually supposed to symbolise the Catholic Church, profiting off the fascist regime in the Spanish Civil War, and the sort of the whole like table of food is representing the greed because he won't allow a child to take even a tiny morsel of food from it.
I can see that. I can definitely see that.
I mean, like most good movie symbolism, there are a few different ways you can read it, which is why it's clever. But
Edward suggested it was the father, didn't he?
I think the fact that those scenes are back to back is definitely supposed to, show the correlation.
Oh yeah.
He's the father, or he's the regime, or he's the church, or he's something else entirely. Probably not good though.
No. So what would your answer be?
Wow. I hate these kind of questions because my mind goes blank.
It can be anything. It can be a Pokemon. It can be the rat from Ratatouille.
What about the rat from Ratatouille? That thing terrifies me.
Ratatouille. What's Ratatouille?
You ever seen Ratatouille? It's one of those like knockoff animated movies, like the Little Panda Fighter, but obviously for Ratatouille. I want to say it's Video Brincada, like a Mexican or Spanish company that does loads of those animated knockoffs.
Oh my god, I've just seen Ratatouille. How to Ratatouille your panda.
Yeah, now you get where I'm going with that. The weird,
that does look quite
poorly modelled 3D animation is really unnerving.
They are what some would call nightmare fuel.
Almost certainly, yeah. Quite funny to watch though, they're good. Sort of so bad it's good movies.
Well, we might watch them on a future week, you never know.
That'd be an idea, actually, yeah. Off-brand films. That could be funny. But anyway, that's sort of spitballing. Is that the word? Yeah, spitballing for future episodes, which we don't need to do now.
Definitely.
Because we have.
No, we've definitely got the first. We've got a good lineup set up, or at least I have.
We've got other movies to talk about, so.
Yeah. Speaking of other movies, me and Michael both have brought a movie this week, just like
we have.
Earlier on. So. I've got a nice £2 coin this week, and I'm going to be flipping that to see what we've got.
Really showing off our extravagant wealth here.
I know. I'm going to say heads for the square, tails for I lost my body.
Alrighty.
It is heads.
Ah,
The
nice.
square. Yeah. I've been wanting to watch this film for weeks now, because, I mean, especially after I finished Dracula, which didn't have the best final episode, but the acting was still strong, and I knew that the actor that played Dracula was also in this, and I saw that it got an award at Cannes or something, and I was like,
Yeah, it got the Palme d'Or, like the big sort of top prize, which to spoil my thoughts, I was a little confused by, but
really? Oh.
well, we'll see about that later. Bit of foreshadowing for you.
I forgot to take notes with this film.
Ah, you're like me then. In honesty, I never take notes. I just go from the top of my head. So not really professional, but it works mostly.
The only thing I knew going into this was the general premise, and I'd seen the trailer. And I think I only made like 3 notes for this, and they're pretty trivial stuff compared to the rest of the film.
Did you mention the monkey in the apartment?
I did not mention the monkey in the apartment, but that was interesting. He did return to monkey, as they say.
Reject society, return to monkey.
He definitely did that. Do you want to talk about the weird scene in the restaurant where the man is being monkey?
Oh, what the formal dinner scene with the
monkey man? Yeah, because I think it's on all posters and stuff. I think it's the most interesting.
You see, for me, that was the scene that actually stood out because, and it's kind of exemplative of I think some of the movie's problems. In that, well, like I say, it's the one that's used on like the posters, and it is a very distinctive shot and recognisable. And I spent most of the movie wondering when, the film was going to get to that bit from the poster. But what kind of killed it for me was the fact that whilst it was clearly intended to demonstrate the film's themes about like how people, like sort of freeze up and don't react when things are happening in front of them. And it's only when the herd instinct kicks in that people do things. It's also basically completely disconnected from the plot of the film. It has nothing to do with the plot. Like, it's got all the themes, yeah, and it's a good sequence on its own, but it feels like it feels like the director came up with a really cool idea, then put it in the movie, even though it doesn't really have a purpose for the plot. It's just there for the message.
I took the main thing of the scene to be the other main theme, which is about how pretentious art can be sometimes.
Oh yeah, no.
And the utter bullshit people come up with.
To be fair, I did
this man.
absolutely love the running sort of critique and satirization of pretentious modern art. That was on point. I really enjoyed that. And that was certainly like the sort of arguably the peak of it, with the ridiculousness of having a guy who's really committed to acting like a gorilla at a formal dinner, and then him proceeding to wreck the place, and by the end, the very sort of uptight, civilized, high society people just completely switch into animal violence as they all gang up on him.
Yeah, because he tries to like crawl over a woman, and it didn't look very.
It didn't look like it was going to end well for her, yeah. But again, it's the whole thing of everybody freezes, nobody acts or moves until one person gets up, and then that's sort of the trigger for everybody else to start doing something. But I believe apparently a good few of those extras were actually Swedish 1%ers who apparently had.
Well, that's quite.
they kept it genuine.
Yeah, the acting in this I think was spot on for the most part. Even the child was good.
Yeah, he was my favourite character, honestly, or one of them, just because he was fun to watch and a good actor. I thought he was great.
Yeah. What do you think of I don't know if you can call it a romantic subplot, because there wasn't really any romance in it
The
at all.
subplot where the main character bangs a journalist and gets kind of guilty about it, and it's all a bit weird. Yeah, again, what does that actually have to do with the movie?
I think it's to do with the hedonistic lifestyles of some artists.
Shows the main character's personal problems and all his issues there, but it doesn't actually relate to the main plot, really. It's more of a side plot that is left with an unsatisfying resolution. And it all
Yeah,
just
it doesn't
felt a bit.
really.
Felt like it felt like the
go.
thread was just dropped towards the end of the movie, and that was it.
It did. It felt like it could go somewhere interesting, but then it didn't, which I think is the problem. Like, it had a promising start with him not really wanting to bang this chick, but he's just going through the motions.
Incidentally,
And then-
I did love that Gilligan cut. Character, he says he's not going to have sex with a smash cut to him standing in her apartment waiting to have sex with her. I'm always a lover
Yeah,
of that trope.
that was good. I love that. With the monkey, of course.
Le Monk. Apparently, it's one of the only movies to feature an adult bonobo, which was
Nice.
the monkey. Because I looked through the IMDb trivia section. Apparently, they had to everybody on set had to have like special briefings on how not to irritate the monkey. Obviously,
You do not want to
you don't want that
irritate
happening.
monkey. No. Was that what? I think I missed something, but there was a strong theme of monkeys throughout the film. Like, there was the guy being the gorilla, and then there was the monkey in the apartment. And I feel like that they were going for some sort of weird monkey theme, and I don't know. I don't think they pulled it off very well. And it's just kind of like, what were they trying to like demonstrate something about nature, or?
I'm guessing it was some sort of symbolism about like people being kind of primitive and more like animals deep down. But it was sort of weird and again not quite fully formed. Felt like there was more to sort of get out of that. But if they'd done that, the movie would have kind of felt possibly even more overly sized in its range of stuff. So maybe it was best to leave it as it was and not make it longer.
I think also at some point we do need to make a list, because there've been a lot of this in these movies, of the most uncomfortable sex scenes we've seen ranked from most uncomfortable to least. Because this one, I think, could be a strong contender.
I would disagree, actually. I think this ranked, in terms of the discomfort to comfort scale, this ranked pretty watchable. I mean, obviously, this is we'd be basing this on the factor if you're like watching the movie alone and not with your parents or whatever, because that's a whole other deal. I pity people who did watch this movie with their parents, because
It's not the most family friendly.
but I mean, it was. I thought it was fairly watchable. Certainly not like Dogtooth or anything.
Oh no, I think it's very difficult to get Dogtooth level.
Levels of absolute discomfort.
I think even though Border had the weird CGI troll penis, I think that was still more comfortable than this, because this you could definitely feel, because even in Border they were both having fun, where in this Dracula just wasn't having it. He was just like, nah man, he didn't want to be there. He wanted to be like somewhere else, not banging this chick, but he was banging this chick anyway, kind of thing.
She seemed a bit disappointed by the end, yeah. So it wasn't exactly the most enjoyable fun time experience for everybody, but well.
And he wouldn't let her keep his condom because he thought she would artificially inseminate herself or something with the semen.
Had some nefarious plans. To be fair, I don't entirely blame him for being untrustworthy, considering that she's weirdly insistent about disposing of the thing herself. Like, just to the point where it would make you suspicious. Though I suppose that does play into the whole thing of, like, they're putting on an exhibition about altruism and trusting people, whilst he actively does not trust people. Though he learns to throughout the movie, to be fair.
Yes. I think that... Oh, I just want to say I was very impressed early on with that scene where he gets his wallet and cufflinks and all that stolen, which is kind of the inciting incident for most other things in the movie.
Yeah, that bit was that apparently that was based on something that actually happened to one of the director's friends, and I mean it is pretty realistic in that sense.
Yeah. All best art comes from reality, except for
Pulling a confidence trick. I do think though we have my favourite part of the movie, and I wish they just made the plot about the absolute fiasco of the completely ill-advised marketing video for the exhibition.
Oh yes, with them blowing up the little girl.
Like, the whole thing, they have... Not only is it a little homeless child with a kitten,
Oh, yes.
Like, it just walks into a lit up box on the floor, some weird, cryptic, pretentious text flashes on screen, and then it explodes. Like, it's so darkly hilarious. The thing is, it's so hilarious, but it's so believable. And that's really good, because as the movie shows you, you can completely see how a bunch of media promoter types who are far more out of touch with the public than they realise think that doing something dramatic and provocative is a good idea when it's just in spectacularly poor taste. And,
Yeah, it reminds me of that thing a while ago with, I think it was Kylie Jenner or something, with the Pepsi ad, where there's a bunch of protesters, and then she gives the Pepsi to the cops, and then
she makes them share a Pepsi, and then, you know, it ends. And even though reality showed reality sort of contrasts that, because there was a time when it was all kicking off a couple of years back in Charlottesville over in America, and a guy who was handing out Pepsis got cracked over the head with a bike lock, which is a sadly far more realistic outcome of those sorts of events. Funnily enough, if I recall, the guy who attacked him turned out to be a teaching assistant on morality and ethics at UC Berkeley. So that's ironic.
I mean, that itself you could make a film on.
And I think there's a good internet historian video about the whole thing. But yeah, no, I do think this film was at its best when it was doing this kind of thing and satirising the complete pretentious, out-of-touch nature of the world of modern art. Which, to be fair, I think the stuff about altruism and trusting people and all that, whilst it did feel a bit laboured and kind of preachy at some points, I do think it was very much about highlighting the, you know, annoying hypocrisy of the whole exercise.
Definitely. With the because like the character, he makes a whole exhibit of like, oh yes, place your phones inside of the square, and then like goes around putting letters in everyone's houses because he's too scared to talk to poor people.
Yeah, exactly. It's the I do think it's interesting how he does change, and he does have an arc as he learns to be more trustworthy and respectful of the poor and the homeless. Because we don't actually see him recover his daughters, but he leaves his stuff with the homeless guy in the shopping centre and clearly gets it back. So his trust is rewarded in that sense. Something that he wouldn't have done at the start of the movie, as we can kind of see from all his interactions there.
Well, something that I noticed was there was a big emphasis on like beggars and stuff, and all through the movie he shows quite I mean, especially for like the general public, because most people, a fair bunch of people are quite disrespectful towards the homeless, which is absolutely abominable. But he seems to act like fairly decent towards them. And then, of course, what they say when they're firing him is it's because the advert is provoking against homeless people. And I just kind of felt that kind of ironic how even though he feels positively towards a group of people because he buggered off to do his own thing, everyone thinks he's completely against them.
It is ironic when he's shortly before that made an apology video explaining how he shouldn't have been disrespectful and acknowledging that, you know, he's been kind of hypocritical and very unfair in his prejudices towards some groups in society. But because of the whole letters through the doors fiasco that led to that situation in the first place, you know, he ends up accidentally approving a monumentally stupid idea. So it is kind of I do feel kind of bad for him in that sense.
I feel bad for him in general because he is extremely pretentious, and for that I can empathise quite a bit.
Yeah, you sure can.
I
sort of varied because there are points where I do pity him, the points where he did just act like an insensitive dick, but it's still sort of not relatable, but a relatively sympathetic character.
Yeah, it also showed how a lot of art, like he said, if I took your handbag and placed it in a museum, would it still be counted as art? And then later on, a bit of the exhibit is hoovered up, and he's just like, "I'll just pile it back up again, no one will notice."
Yeah, I love that bit, actually.
Yeah, I felt that kind of like showed that some art is shit. I mean, art is subjective, but some art is shit.
Yeah, I mean, all art is subjective. Like you said, all art is subjective. But at the same time, some of it just isn't that good. Like, yeah. I think my older stepsister loves to call this kind of stuff art wank, where it's like pretentious pseudo-intellectual statements about, you know, what does it mean to be art, but at the same time it's just a bunch of fucking piles of gravel and a neon sign. Like,
this is why I hated art GCSE so much, because it just annoyed me so much, because it's like, oh, go and tell you what these artists make you feel, and it's like, I feel nothing from these artists. I don't really care about their work. It's not stirring any emotion. It's just there.
And that's the thing, simple art like that can be impactful when it's done well, but a lot of the time, to the average person, it just sort of falls flat.
I think it's...
Art tends to impress people far more when you can tell that there has been a lot of skill that's put into it. Hence why a good painting or sculpture is really impressive, because that takes serious work and talent to do.
Like, I absolutely love marble sculptures. They're like my favourite parts of art. But like, say if like an art teacher from back when I was doing my GCSEs was like, tell me what this makes you feel, and it's just some random artist that I don't have any connection to, I won't really care or give a shit, and I think that's just kind of unfair.
But again, some people do, because art is subjective, and anything can be art, but maybe or maybe not. But yeah, I did enjoy the movie's messaging on that whole idea, though it always felt a little sort of, what would the way to put it? Sort of slightly non-committal in terms of that, because whilst that was a big part of the theme, the main theme it sort of lingered on was, again, homeless, beggars, whatever they choose to call them, and hypocritical attitudes towards them. But at parts, I felt that part kind of started to get preachy. There was definitely a couple of moments where I was like, yeah, okay, I get the point you're trying to make. You're kind of overdoing it here. For me, the scene with all of the crowd walking past the pamphleter who keep asking, like, do you want to save a life? And I feel like, I may have misinterpreted it, but I feel like it was supposed to be saying, people sort of ignore those chances to be altruistic. But at the same time, it did feel slightly disingenuous, because in reality, like, most of those sort of pamphleter types are, handing out sort of pamphlets for, like, massive charities where how much of that money you actually...
Any of the money actually goes to the people.
Yeah, how much of that money you actually donate is going to go towards the cause, and how much is going to go towards marketing and management and paying pamphleteers.
And you definitely don't want to give it towards Oxfam, because they'll just spend it on prostitutes, blackjack, and hookers.
The Oxfam fiasco is kind of demonstrated the broader thing in that these big charities, in many ways, do still operate like companies, especially when they get larger, and the chances that your donations are actually going towards that cause are diminishing. It's not to tar them all with the same brush. There are a lot of charities that you can be guaranteed are doing good work, but that part stuck out to me because it was a bit like, yeah, well, it's not as clear cut as you're making it appear for the sake of your message. Also, thematically, something I thought was kind of interesting was the sense of modern art's disrespect for history, which I think was what they're going for. Because obviously, there's that whole...
Oh, they tear the head off the thing, don't they?
Well, the two things that stood out to me were pulling down a historic statue to... If I understood it correctly, they pull down the statue to make space for the square, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And also, sort of, when they, just decide to hang out in the old royal apartments. Because I did look up the whole... Because obviously I think if you're not, like, Swedish, the cultural reference in that sense doesn't quite make sense. The whole thing is that the art gallery is in, like, part of the Swedish Royal Palace in Stockholm. And I think that is accurate. I think part of that building is an art gallery. But I know, certainly in the current day, that the palace is used as a residence for the Swedish royal family and, like, offices of government and stuff. But again, the whole thing of, like, basically chilling in the historic rooms with what are probably very valuable interiors and furnitures, for me, did give me an immediate reaction of, no, don't touch that, that's all, like, pricelessly valuable, what are you doing?
It did give me a certain reaction as well, and obviously Count Dracula's using really old piano to pick up girls, quite unsuccessfully.
Yeah, was it a piano, was it a, oh god, I've forgotten the name.
It certainly wasn't a keyboard.
No, it's like a piano, but it's, yeah, oh, that's gonna really annoy me now.
You're going to wake up at like 2 a.m. and remember it and be really, really annoyed.
Oh, I'll probably remember it later. But yeah, I as somebody who really, really likes history, I do always have a sort of instinctive, oh no reaction when I see stuff like that. But I guess that the film was kind of going for a sense of modern art blithely rejecting historical art and just sort of like flippantly saying, yeah, it's worthless, and being kind of ignorant towards it, because again, they're stuck so far up their own arses that, they're going to come out their mouth.
Yes, I mean, art again is subjective. I personally prefer older art to newer art. Like a lot of older.
I don't know. I was going to say, I do like a good trip around a modern art gallery, and I can definitely enjoy a lot of modern art, but there is also a lot of it I just do find annoyingly pretentious. But, to each their own.
I'm just not really into all the abstract stuff. Like I like a good old-fashioned oil painting. I don't like a bunch of squiggly lines on a page that don't actually mean any, or that they say they mean something, but it's just like someone's drawn it with their foot, and that's the meaning behind it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's again with abstract art, with old art, I've always find for my personal enjoyment, it just really matters whether or not it's good. And sometimes there's something which is really weird, but I'll be really impressed by, and there's something where I'm just sort of like read the little description panel next to it and sort of wonder how they extracted that meaning from what I'm looking at, because the two don't seem to be matching up. Now, of course, to anybody listening who does love modern art, that is perfectly fine. Like, jokes aside, this kind of thing is up to personal taste. If you enjoy that, then more power to you. Don't let us stop you. And if you love old art or you don't like old art, again, it's the same thing. It's all people's own preferences. But yeah, I certainly got the impression that I think the director is involved with the art world. I certainly got the impression that he probably is, just because there's a fair bit of stuff that seems to be based on, personal experiences.
Definitely. It does seem like he's had some sort of insight. And to be fair, being a director, he probably has like some people who do photography or artists with that kind of thing. Like the college where I go to, I mingle with like musicians and people who do like set design and stuff, and I know how all that stuff kind of goes, but not really, kind of thing. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I have checked. The film was loosely inspired by the director's own experiences and an art installation that I think he worked on with Kyle Borman. Talking about artists, actually, the artist that they credit the square to in the movie, who is one Lola Arias, that is the name of an actual real-life artist who wasn't supposedly said she wasn't asked for permission to use her name in the movie. Yeah, so apparently, just the note on Wikipedia that says real life Argentine artist Lola Arias wasn't involved in creating the film's particular work and denounced the director for using her name without her consent. He denied the allegation and said that she had agreed to it, but had misremembered the interaction. So, some drama going on there.
Definitely,
Yeah,
it's all riling up in the art world.
Ooh.
I think that if anyone wants to look at a beautiful piece of classical art, and I'm a bit biased because this is my favourite piece of classical art, look at Dante and Virgil in Hell. It is quite possibly my favourite. Probably followed closely after by that painting of Napoleon crossing the Alps. Like, two paintings I absolutely adore.
Walker is a good gallery.
Yeah, definitely one of my favourites.
It's pretty good for modern art, though. They tend not to update the collection too frequently. If I think for modern art, if you ever get a chance, if you ever happen to be in London, the Tate Modern is definitely worth seeing.
Oh yeah, I think I've been to the Tate Modern. Like when I last went to, whenever I go to London, I go to the Science Museum and the Natural History Museum, both of them. I think I really like the Science Museum because they've got like a flight simulator where you can go upside down and stuff. And that's just really fun.
If I have been to the Science Museum, it's been years since I have, honestly. I've barely ever been to the Natural History Museum, actually, for all the times I've visited London. Whenever we go, we tend to sort of be more around the South Bank area, which is, the South Bank is a really nice part of that city as well. But yeah, the Tate Modern is like on the cutting edge, really, and it is, whilst there is some definitely pretentious stuff, there is also just genuinely good modern art that I'd have thought
that the Science Museum would be quite up your alley. Like in the Walker, you quite like the all the spacey stuff, but like in the Natural Science Museum, in the Science Museum in London, they've got like massive like actual space shuttles and stuff, and like all the suits worn by astronauts. And I thought that'd be right up your alley.
I am a sucker for space. I always end up in the British Museum one way or another, just because I love the historical collections. The British Library as well. There is one that always sticks with me is there's a museum down south, because we used to go on holiday down there. half terms usually when I was like in primary school, me and my family. And it's at the I think it's the RAF museum at Yeovilton. They've got a great collection of like old decommissioned planes. We mainly went there because my dad loves it because he's like a massive plane nerd. But they do have a Concorde, and that's the one that always sticks with me just because it's so impressive. But it's a really, really impressive place. They had like all sorts of cool stuff there. But anyway, I think we've strayed far enough off topic to justify moving to final thoughts. So
I would say so. As the person who chose this film, I shall go. Actually, I kind of want to hear your rantings,
rankings, tomato. Yeah. So, well, like I said, I was kind of confused as to why this got the Palme d'Or, and I do stand by that, because while I do think it is a good movie that I enjoyed watching, it did feel a bit directionless, and it generally struck me as there were times where it felt like a cinematic equivalent of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. And some of it stuck. Most of it stuck, to be fair, but it felt a bit flabby in places. Like it wasn't. The writing wasn't bad, but the script could have been reworked to make it more streamlined. But the acting was great. The cinematography was pretty good, though. I
think it was spot on. Well, almost.
To be fair, it was pretty good. Like I was gonna say, it wasn't remarkable, but it's still like noticing sort of bits I enjoyed. And the essential themes and messages were good. But like I say, I mean, I haven't watched the other films that were there at Cannes that year, funnily enough. But I certainly wouldn't have pegged it for the winner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
I'd probably give it like... It's still a pretty damn good movie, and I would recommend watching it if you fancy. So give it like a 7.5.
7.5. That's a pretty respectable ranking for it. I'd been quite looking forward to this. I've probably said that before, and I wouldn't say that I was disappointed. I enjoyed the wackiness of it. It wasn't too. It had the good random, but I felt in bits it could be a bit too XD random kind of thing. I felt it could do with more structure, and for that reason, I'd probably go with 7.7 around there. So we've got the same.
Pretty similar then.
Yeah.
I just looked actually to see what else was at Cannes that year. There's a few notable ones. The Beguiled, which is Sofia Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. What else do I recognise? Killing of a Sacred Deer. Is Yorgos Lanthimos.
I've heard of that one, but that was Yorgos Lanthimos.
Considering how good his films are supposed to be, I'd be kind of surprised that didn't win. And Okia, is it pronounced Okia? The Bong Joon-ho's,
the one by John, the guy who did Parasite and Sea Fog.
Mm-hmm. And You Never Really Were Here. No, You Were Never Really Here, which I think I recognise the name of, but still, it's. I don't know. Honestly, I can't judge because I've only seen some of them, but. I mean, these director names are all like fairly,
prestigious
and impressive. It's quite interesting to see Sofia Coppola manage that actually, because normally sort of children of great creatives tend not to, go as far as their parents did. But I know we'll have to see about that. But yeah, shall we move on?
I think that's a splendid idea, Michael. By the way, I just want to give a quick shout out. Michael has started an OnlyFans account. If anyone wants to subscribe to it, there's a link in the comment section below.
Don't lie. You know you want to.
Okay, so without a further ado, Michael, do you want to introduce your film for this week, which I'm actually quite excited to review?
You keep saying without further ado rather than ado than the A.
I guess it's just a little Josephism.
Mispronunciation, I think, is the technical term. So I Lost My Body, French animated movie based on I think a book or a comic it's based on, I believe. I wasn't quite able to find what it was originally. But yeah, it's basically about... I mean, there's many tracks to it because the weird premise. It's about a guy who loses his hand in an accident, and about half of the movie is also the hand just reanimates itself, which is sort of one of those elements of sort of magical realism. No, plot contrivance is a wrong word. Suspension of disbelief kind of actions.
Yeah, it's never explained. You're just kind of...
Yeah, it's never explained because you don't really need to know why it happens. It just does. And the film is split between the perspective of the main character, showing the events leading up to and after his accident, and the other half of the movie is his hand trying to get back to him. I especially really enjoyed all the stuff from the hand's perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Just, again, because of seeing I think it's... Let me check. I'm fairly sure the hand is a she, apparently. According to the script, anyway.
I found, like, the amount of emotion they were able to put into a disembodied limb was absolutely astounding, because, like, when this hand felt sad, even though it doesn't have any face or anything, you could still feel that it was absolutely miserable.
Yeah, here we go. The film, this is according to the IMDb trivia section, so if I'm wrong, blame them. Although the film never names the hand, in the screenplay she's referred to as Rosalie. Oh yeah. But yeah, no, I really loved how the hand is, she's animated with so much character and personality, despite being a hand and a bunch of fingers. And to the point where despite the fact I am aware that a hand can't really drown, I was still like quite sort of, invested in the hand's plight.
It did definitely. There was a lot of tense moments when you were like, "Oh my god, is it going to die?" And also, because we know he gets his hand chopped off, there are a lot of moments where he's like, "Oh my god, is he going to get his hand chopped off now? What's going to happen?" But no, they're just blue balling us, and he's not actually getting his or blue handing us. I suppose.
Balling with hand. And I did like the I mean the first image of the movie is the fly, and sort of finally figuring out what all of the foreshadowing with catching the fly is about, and it is directly responsible for him losing the hand. Don't woodwork when you're drunk and tired is the message, I think.
I think that's definitely a very good message. I mean, I've been going ham on flies recently because we bought a fly swat, so I've been hunting them for sport in my back garden, because I've got nothing better to do.
I think I also I feel like one of the things I liked about this movie is that it does recognisable tropes, but it manages to execute them well enough that you don't really mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the whole with the whole weird stalky thing, which I was a bit weirded out by.
The same guy, I was like, it's very much a sort of romance story trope of protagonist encounters love interest, protagonist then lies to love interest to try and get closer to them, protagonist screws it all up. However, what I did like was that the movie didn't just go with a she forgives him and it's all happy kind of ending. The movie's ending is quite ambiguous anyway. I was sort of rather struck by like, wait, that's it kind of moment.
Yeah, because just like Dogtooth, it had quite a long end credit sequence. So I was like, oh, I thought it had longer to go.
But I did really enjoy the fact that they were kind of subversive and didn't just slap a decisive, yeah, they got together and they were happy kind of ending. It is a bit more ambiguous. Which, to be fair, it should be, because lying to somebody like that is not a good way to endear yourself to them in real life. Don't do it. Like, really, somebody's not necessarily going to forgive you for that kind of thing. And I think the movie did show that he was in the wrong, even if he was misguided. Following people home from their place of employment. I did think that as well. The dead parents' backstory is one that has been done countless times before.
Batman, Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's everywhere. But I do think that they did do it quite well, and I found that they gave enough time to establish the parents as characters and establish their significance to the protagonist to the point where I was genuinely emotionally affected by their death. Because most film stories, even with dead parents as a trope, tend to just reduce them to plot devices for the protagonist and don't really characterize them. but I found they made sure to actually get the watcher familiar with them before they killed them off. And I might be biased because I can sympathise more with that kind of thing anyway due to my own personal circumstances. But, it's still sort of, again, a recognisable trope that was well executed.
Yeah, I think it is quite difficult to do it, especially nowadays in media, because it's been done for since films have really began, because it's a very good character motivation. But to be able to do it where it actually is a good character motivation and not like a bit of a sloppy one, it's very commendable.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh yeah, and his dad died, he's an orphan. Yeah, there's more to it than just that. Also, like,
I misheard you. I thought you said he's northern for a second. Like, that was part of his tragic backstory.
To be fair, being northern could be part of a tragic backstory, but you don't have to lose your parents for it. On the subject of cultural identity, I did like as well the fact that and they actually clarify it in because obviously when I watched it, I was thinking that, he's obviously from Muslim background, his parents' tombstones, the Arabic text on the globe that he's playing with as a kid with his dad. I checked, and I didn't quite figure out in the movie itself, but no, what it actually was he's born and raised in Morocco. And then when his parents...
I thought it was going to be Algerian, because that was formerly French territory.
Yeah, obviously, he's a guy of Muslim origin in France. He's going to be from Algeria, right? And Morocco is close enough. Obviously, I don't think the French ruled Morocco, did they?
No, that was the Spanish.
Yeah, they did at one point anyway. But yeah, no, and once his parents die, he moves over to Paris with his neglectful uncle. And so I thought that was kind of, added some depth to the character, and I think subtly exacerbates his social outsider status in the story. He never encounters any sort of overt discrimination based on his ethnicity or background, but the fact that he is a guy of Moroccan origin in France means that already he's kind of set apart as a bit of an outsider, which he is just sort of in general, because he's clearly a very lonely guy, and you kind of have to pity him for that.
I think they did a good job, even though his cousin's only in it for not that long at all, but they definitely set him up with his 5 odd lines as a proper prick.
You get a pretty clear sense of the reputation, i.e. his cousin is kind of an asshole, but he's the closest thing to a friend the protagonist has, unfortunately. Yeah, I feel bad for him.
I definitely predicted that the woodworking guy was going to have an illness, and I thought he was going to die or something, because that's been done quite a lot.
I was scared he was going to die.
Obviously, Dance in Reality. I thought, are they going to do San Jose again? Or are they going to do something like that woman from whatchamacallit, The Lift Boy? Where, oh, God.
It seemed sort of like... Well, not unlikely, but that seemed like they might be going in that direction. At the same time, I did think it was kind of sad that, to my memory, the last time we see him in the movie is he's talking through the door to the main character and ends up just sort of giving up and going.
Yeah, even though you get a sense that he genuinely does care about the main character.
Yeah,
but obviously the main character only cares about him because he wants to bang his niece.
I think, the main character sort of comes to realise that and does feel guilty about it, which, to be fair, he should, because it was kind of a shitty, deceptive thing to do, though. You get the impression that he did actually become a pretty good woodworker, so, he's at least gained the skill.
Or at least he can't use it anymore because he's only got one hand, unfortunately.
Yeah, good point, actually. No, that was the other thing that struck me, because I was half expecting that the hand would find some way to reattach itself, because it has returned to life, so get it actually sticking itself back onto his arm wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility, but that doesn't happen, does it? The
no
hand sort of retreats after. The last we see, the hand's on the roof with the girl, and the hand sort of scurries off into the snow, and we don't see her again. I especially really liked the. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Personally, what I thought had happened was, because there was Well, my original thought was that the hand was going to build himself a body and it was going to be some sort of Frankenstein thing with the eyes and the skeleton, and it was going to be something fun like that. But then I started to think, hang on, I reckon that this guy has died and that his soul has transferred into his hand because fate is keeping him alive or something. But no, it turns out he was still alive.
He's still around. Hand is still around. It's all cool. Not really, because he doesn't have his hand, but she's doing her own thing. I did think that I really liked showing the flashbacks of his life from the hand's perspective, particularly because pretty much all of those flashbacks focused on the hands and what he was touching and doing with them. That was particularly obviously the right hand, because that's the one that's missing. I think that was done quite subtly but very cleverly to sort of highlight that all of these things were being looked at from that perspective. Certainly think that this couldn't have been done in anything other than animation, because
oh no, this would have been ridiculous in live action. It would have been really bad CGI.
Yeah, it would have cost a crazy amount to get the CGI good, but it also would have just not been quite right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because with this, the animation it was 8 frames a second or something like that. There wasn't very many frames, but the frames that it did have were absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
Everything felt purposeful.
It allowed them to bring a lot of colour and life and character to the world and the characters that might not have been possible with animation. Animation? No, it was possible with animation. It would have been possible with live action. Yes. Particularly the hand. I don't think you could have... If the hand was real, real inverted commas, it would have been weird and distracting. But the fact that it's animated means that they can imbue it with a lot more personality and sort of distinctiveness, to the point where I certainly got genuinely attached to the thing and stuff like...
Yes, my mum actually cried at one point, well, a few points, because I think it was near the end, and also I think at one point when the hand was in danger. So that was quite interesting, having that happening in the room.
The fight with the rats and the getting caught in a garbage truck and having to swing across a motorway, all of those sort of moments of jeopardy. I especially like the motorway bit, actually, because of the image of the astronaut waving the hand on. I really loved that.
That was sweet.
I sort of feel a little frustrated that we didn't actually get to see the hand reunite with the main character, so it meant that in many ways the journey had felt sort of purposeless. But I felt, sort of thinking about it, that the hand still kind of learns the same lesson he does, in the sense that...
Yeah, I was thinking of that, because he's not able to be united with the girl he likes, and the hand isn't being able to unite with the body it's used to.
I feel like with him and the girl he likes, there is a sort of sense that, well, it's ambiguous. Anything could happen, what's going to go beyond that is impossible to say. But I did like that both him and the hand learned to make a big risk, literally take a jump and make a big risky decision to move forward and go away from what they sort of originally thought their plan was. Well, maybe not going away from the original plan, but the sense that he does what he sort of talked about earlier and jumps to the crane in the same way that the hand takes a ridiculous sort of journey across the motorway to get there, despite how risky and dangerous it is to do. So I feel like that was a deliberate parallel between the two. I guess we can call them characters. The hand counts as a character.
Yeah, I was about to say, can you call the hand a distinct character? Because he is
I feel like she has enough apparent... She's got personal agency and motive and personality, despite, like you said, never actually speaking or anything.
Yeah. I think this was an absolutely beautiful film. I think I preferred this to the Studio Ghibli from last week in terms of animation, personally.
Oh, you're making a bold statement.
I know. I preferred this to the studio. I wouldn't say I prefer Howl's Moving Castle to this still, I think, but for different reasons. But I think that I preferred the animation in this to Spirited Away's animation, so weebs stone me to death, I don't care.
I will, honestly. whilst both being 2D animated, they are still quite different movies, to be fair. But
but you can still compare animation styles. And
but like, come on, man, Spirited Away is on another level. It just is.
I don't know. I think this one resonated with me a lot more than Spirited Away.
Story-wise, I think it definitely can resonate. I sometimes am a sucker for just a fairly nice romance, and I think it did that quite well, but in a way that wasn't quite formulaic and felt a bit more. It did feel more believable. It wasn't storybook, and it was kind of, scenes of awkward social interaction and confusion and misunderstanding and very human mistakes that the characters make that gave it that extra level of plausibility that I think makes these kind of things more enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got to take a new jump with the romance genre because it's gone through the period of being like all these cool macho men, and then it's gone through another period of it being all socially inept people who have no idea of the way around women.
Or as I call Scott Pilgrim syndrome.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking of Scott Pilgrim, but after Scott Pilgrim, there were a lot of all the romantic protagonists basically became Scott Pilgrim. I think there needs to be a nice middle ground kind of thing. So it's not someone who's like overly sexual and not someone who's completely sexually inept, just someone who's decent.
Yeah, the romance appears so much in fiction that it is very much swamped in tropes and conventions and cliches, and it is
I suppose it's one of the main things that life is made out of, so it's quite inevitable, really.
Yeah, it is kind of hard to take something that has been done many times before and do it in a way that feels distinct and original and can still emotionally impact the viewer. And I feel like this movie did manage to do that. Sure, it felt a bit cliche at some points, but I was invested. I felt for it,
It's hard, less cliches than the average romantic film, which I think is quite difficult, really, because they have a lot of cliches, and it's very difficult to not fall for them every time.
Yeah, I also, watching this, did sort of feel especially before they resolve, for the bit with the igloo, where they have a deserved falling out as the female main character realizes, he's actively lied to her, and is understandably rather angry about that. Up until that point, I sort of feared she was going to be a bit of a manic pixie dream girl. But I think they successfully steered away from that and gave her enough agency of her own.
I'm not familiar with the term manic pixie whatever girl.
Manic pixie dream girl. Mean? It's a stock character. Here we go. Stock character. Yeah, it's a kind of stock character female romantic interest. Coin was termed by film critic Nathan Rabin, who says that the manic pixie dream girl exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life in its infinite mysteries and adventures. They're often characterized by helping a male protagonist, but without pursuing their own happiness, and they tend to be kind of flat characters because they lack much in the way of internal motivation and drive, because as the quote implies, they're kind of written by writer-directors as a bit of a personal fantasy thing.
Again, that kind of reminds me of Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, funnily enough, Ramona Flowers is sometimes cited as an example.
Yeah. Although it's still a great film, definitely one of my favourites.
Yeah, like let's not get any... Let's not have any misconceptions. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is still a great movie. And I feel
it's
like
just a lot of the tropes it used weren't tropes yet.
Or possibly it set up tropes it used story devices that other movies copied and didn't do as well. It kind of started a few tropes, but those tropes quickly became cliches.
Yeah.
And I think that... So that's... And again, though, whenever one work sort of starts a maybe not necessarily a genre, but inspires others, that is kind of inevitable. For me, I always think of we were talking last week about cyberpunk. William Gibson's Neuromancer is one of the probably most influential science fiction books. Just it basically is like the start of cyberpunk as a genre, but when you read it today, it feels very derivative. But that's because,
I think you talked to me about this when we were at the library.
All of the tropes that are now worn out for the cyberpunk genre were started by that book. So it's not through no fault of its own. Though I do also think that whilst there are many, many tropes that have been picked up from Scott Pilgrim, I do sometimes feel like people kind of missed what felt like one of the main lessons of the movie, in the sense of the power of self-respect is sometimes more important than love. And that's what Scott learns by the end.
If you're being dragged around by someone, you should probably not stay with them because you're being dragged around, and you've got to have some respect for yourself. I don't know. I'm not really the person to be giving out advice about this kind of stuff or relationship stuff. So just take it from someone else. Don't
take us as relationship experts. We're not.
We're not. We're definitely not. No.
No. Don't use our words as gospel, please.
I'm no good.
Build wooden igloos because the girl you're into talked about snow and stuff, and then lie to her because you were also a pizza delivery guy. Just obviously a very specific scenario. But if you happen to be in the exact same scenario as the movie I Lost My Body, don't do what the main character did. Especially because jumping onto cranes is dangerous, right? That might not be a good idea.
And she will think that you've just done this whole elaborate thing so you could screw a girl on an igloo. Because that's how
honestly, though,
read.
In that situation, from her point of view, I think it is pretty reasonable to think that, for her to assume that he's just trying to get in her pants. I don't think that's wrong with her at all.
I might go back through this and see if it fits within the Dennis rules of engagement.
He's used in the Dennis system. Oh god, I hope he isn't. Do we have anything else to say? Let me think.
Let me just quickly consult my naughty boys. This was I originally thought this was going to be like Toy Story, but for body parts. How wrong I was. Something about a button. Stalker, as in he was being a stalker, not the really bad 70s film. Oh, and my last note, so goddamn emotional.
Oh.
Also, quite interestingly, this was set in 1994, so not contemporaneously. I suppose you can tell that because there's the Walkman and stuff.
The technology was probably a giveaway. It was set, I think. What did you read? What did you read about the time setting?
No idea, but I think I did read about it somewhere. I've not just come.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to think.
I've not just brought it out of my arse.
Yeah, sometimes you do that. I can't think of anything in the movie that concretely identifies a time, which probably works in its favour that it keeps it sort of, roughly contemporaneous, but never quite nailing it down. Because then, obviously, if you focus too much on artifacts of the time, it can end up making your movie feel dated.
Yes. I mean, I think that quite a few movies try and lean into the whole 80s thing far too much because obviously the 80s kids have grown up, but I just can't. I mean, Stranger Things was good for the first season, and then it just wasn't afterwards because they were just overdoing it so much, and it's just I'm not from the 80s. I don't care.
80s nostalgia is a powerful force, and usually the peak nostalgia period is anything that's about 25 to 30 years ago, which means that I think that the 80s is actually shifting away. The 80s is gonna shift out of the nostalgia window, and it's gonna start being the 90s instead. And I feel like we are just about starting to see that happen now. And it'll probably get stronger over the next few years.
I've noticed a bit.
It generally depends on at what point do people who were kids in that decade grow up and become consumers to which you can market things to.
Yeah. or what's his name? That one that makes the terrible Transformers movies. Michael Bay, or they become Michael Bay and
I mean, I suppose
make trash.
it's also possible to become Michael Bay, but whether you would like to become Michael Bay, that might not be a good idea.
No,
Yeah, again, I mean, he's got more money than I have, so
yeah, but at the same time, he makes monies. He makes money. Well, he does make monies. He makes films that make a lot of money, but whether they're good or not is another pickle in the pot.
I mean, at the end of the day, like I always get the impression that he is making stuff he himself enjoys, at least usually.
Yeah, which I can respect. Like, I derive a lot of how much I enjoy something of whether I think the people working on it enjoyed it. Because the more the people working on it enjoyed it, the less soulless a work usually is.
Yeah,
I do get the sense that Michael Bay enjoys what he's doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
I do think that I have got the impression he got burnt out on the Transformers movies. I think by the time of the last night, was feeling like he was getting sick of it.
But at the same time, he's still using stuff from the Transformers lore. Because they did have dinosaur Transformers, and obviously he's grown up with as a kid, and he's like, I want to see them on the big screen. But they were just a way for a company to get more money selling toys to kids.
Funnily enough, we're saying that about Transformers. Let us not dare to attack the artistic integrity of, again, the animated series that was made to sell toys to kids. I mean, the thing with that kind of thing though is it's sometimes it's not a question of whether or not you're doing it to sell a product. It's how well you're doing it.
The Star Wars sequels.
Star Wars has always been heavily merchandisable. It's in the nature, but as long as you can still make it good, people won't be too bothered. Not the biggest deal in the world. But anyway, again, we have strayed far enough to
definitely strayed
mandate some
far.
final thoughts. So, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, this is probably going to surprise you a bit, but I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. This is my second 10 out of 10 on the podcast, and I think it is very well deserved. I thought this was a beautiful movie, very emotional, and I loved it. And everyone cried when they watched it, or at least in my house they did. It was brilliant. Thank you for suggesting it, Michael. I am wholeheartedly grateful.
Oh well, guess I made a good choice there. Huh.
Yes.
Personally, I really enjoyed it. I did. It's not perfect, but it's definitely it touched my cold, withered heart. I'd probably give it a strong 8. I think it was really well animated, and I was happier for watching it. You know what I mean? Strong 8, maybe a light 9. It was nominated for an Academy Award, so that's probably a good sign. It lost Best Animated to Toy Story 4, which I'm still not quite sure whether I agree with or not.
I probably won't get around to watching Toy Story 4 because I'm just not really a Toy Story fan, to be honest.
I mean, if you enjoyed the first 2 movies, I would definitely say it's worth a watch because they pretty much managed to maintain a consistent level of quality, which shouldn't be possible. I don't know how they did that.
I only liked the first 2, and really the second one out of those 2. I only like the second one.
It's a pretty 1, 2, and 3 are a damn solid trilogy, I would say.
I never really got on with 3. It had the same vibes as Planes 2, kind of. Selling outness.
I don't know. Planes is fucking planes. And that's the thing though. Even though you know that obviously each of the sequels has been made with a financial incentive, none of them to me ever felt like selling out. They always still felt like they did have a genuine heart of emotional integrity. And I think.
Well, have you ever seen Planes 2? Can you?
We're talking about Toy Story sequels here, not the God forbidden Cars franchise. Fucking Cars. I always kind of resented that. Pixar being forced to devote time and resources for movies like WALL-E and Inside Out, when they could be doing more of that. But no, let's make Cars 3 because that's what everybody fucking asked for.
Did they make a third one?
They made Cars 3, yeah, Jesus Christ. And then they made. Look, we're not here to talk about this stuff. We can maybe do Pixar movies another time. I don't know.
Quite possibly.
So that's both movies done. Unless we've got anything else to say.
Oh, like, comment, subscribe, bell notifications, all that kind of stuff.
Come on, give us that engagement. Milk the algorithm.
We've got 21 subscribers now, so that's very good.
Whoa, damn. We're going up in the world, aren't we?
We really are. We are popular boys with the masses of the world. All 21 of them.
Yes, the film critics of the people, that's what we are. Well, critics in very large inverted commas. We can't call ourselves critics, we are absolute amateurs. I think that is us done for today. Goodbye, everybody, and remember that we review it so you don't have to. That nostalgia critic line.